situated, most of them were around the ports. Because the seamen, when they come from sea, that is where they go and sit and chat and so on, be drinking and talking. So this plimsoll man noticed that when the ship sailed from port, the next time they hear the ship could not make it to the end of the voyage and it has sunk. That was the chorus, it has sunk, it has sunk. So he came up with the idea that the ships were loading too much. Those days they would load in such a way that if you had this is the draft of the vessel, and this is the board, the freeboard, the topmost part of the vessel here. Instead of leaving some space, which is what we call freeboard now, some of them could load even up to this point. Because ships were few, but there were cargoes that were moving. So once he thought he had space in his ship, you put the cargo in. Like you see a lot of our trucks doing. They are overloaded and they keep breaking down. So the ships were overloading, and then when they go to sea, and those days too, the ships were made of wood, not steel like we have today. Most of them were wooden ships, and therefore making wooden ships watertight. That is, making it in such a way that the water will not drip out or come in is very difficult with wooden ships. Okay. So when they go to sea and the waves come on, the ship will sink because they didn't have any freeboard, a shock absorber to take the impact of the wind, that the water that is coming on. So this man noticed it, and he originated the idea that if they could leave a bit of space between the waterline and the main deck, it would help so that the ships do not sink just like that. Anyhow. So that he introduced that idea, and because of that, in honor of him, they named it the plimsoll mark. But the plimsoll mark has now been adapted into the international regulations known as the load line rules for sea carriage. Okay. So we have the plimsoll mark, which is used in conjunction with the load line marks. And the load line marks are awarded, or they are given to the ship after certain calculations are done. They know what the exact point to paint that S line, the summer line, and then the other lines also. The S means summer, the W means winter, the T means tropical. And depending on which region you are in and what time of the year, season of the year you are in, then you load. Here in Africa or within the tropics, the boundaries of the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, the weather is mostly calm. Once in a while, we get what we call a line squall, where the winds will be boisterous, blowing people's roofs and so on. But over there in the higher latitude, the temperate regions, that is above the tropics, Cancer up and then Capricorn down, the winds are not what we see here and then we are crying. It can be very, very strong winds. And the waves then pick up, have very huge waves. Some are as tall as the ships that you see in port. See it, and it will come and break on the ship. Okay. So for that reason, when the weather is bad, then you cannot load up to the summer, you load up to the winter. So in areas where they have winter as a season, when you are going there during the winter months, okay, which usually is roughly between December to March, April, then you cannot load up to the summer, you have to load to the winter. And then when you are within the tropic, if your sailing is only between Cancer and Capricorn, up back and forth, that is virtually, using Africa as an example, that is between the north and south of Africa, then you can load up to the tropical. That means you have a smaller freeboard because the winds are not that heavy. Okay. And so the waves will not break onto the ship that much. And then the marks with the F and T, the F1 relates to the summer. You know, the density of water, the density of salt water is greater than the density of fresh water. But there are some ports here in Ghana, all our ports are by the seaside, so we don't have that problem. Assuming that it was navigable. The River Volta was navigable all the way to even Akosombo, and ships could go there. Then when the ship goes to Akosombo, when she is loading, she can load up to the F mark. Okay. Then when she comes to the sea, automatically she will rise up to the S mark, because the fresh water is density 1 or 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter, whereas the density of salt water is 1.025. Okay. So for that reason, they've made the allowance so that if a ship is loading in an area which is totally fresh water, she can load up to the F mark. When she comes down to sea, automatically without her doing anything, you see her come up to the summer mark, so that the ship owner is not cheated, because there might be cargo he could pick. If he loads up to summer, when he comes into the open sea, which is denser than the fresh water, she will rise up, which means she has shortchanged herself by some tonnage which she could have picked. So to make that allowance for ship owners, then they have those marks. The tropical, the TF relates to when she is floating at the tropical mark, and then the F is for the summer mark. Then you have that small mark at the bottom there, which is the winter North Atlantic. When a ship is less than or up to a ship from 100 meters and downwards, she has to have that WNA, and it means winter North Atlantic. In the North Atlantic zone, the winter is very rough, and for those smaller ships, then they give it an additional rise. That is, she cannot load up to the winter mark, which is for bigger ships more than 100 meters. But if she's less than 100 meters, then she can only load for winter area. She can load up to the winter North Atlantic mark. So all is geared towards making sure that the ship is safe to go back and come without any story of sinking, as they used to have in those days. Okay, so that is the plimsoll mark and the additional marks with them. So this is the plimsoll mark. Sometimes you would have with the load line marks, you see that you have this side, which is for normal ships. The other side here, the one with the LTF, LF, and LT, LW. When we are loading timber, timber has this property of being buoyant. Most wood, you put it on water, it will be floating. Okay, and because of that, if you load timber, then you have the opportunity to sink the vessel some more. You can load more when you are loading timber because of the buoyancy it gives. Buoyancy is very, very important. When you take, for example, if you take a tin of an empty tin of Milo, you put water in it, close it, and put it. If it is not full, put it in any water. You see that it is floating. It is the buoyancy, that empty space above the water within that container, that is giving her that property of being able to float. And we call that buoyancy. And the buoyancy is very, very important. It is because of the buoyancy we don't allow the vessels to load right up to the top mark. So the space in there is giving her additional buoyancy. And so when you take wood, because wood has that property of being buoyant, then you can load some more. So if you see the position of the S here, and then the position of the S on the lumbar side, you see that this one is deeper than this. So you can load more here. So it is when a vessel, those days when we used to carry, especially even here from Ghana, we used to carry a lot of timber up north. Now that everybody is crying about what do you call it, greenhouse effect and deforestation and so on. So now the carriage of raw timber is going down. People are trying to find alternative materials for use other than wood, and for that reason you don't see it. But in Takoradi, for example, a lot of ships that came to load some timber, and those types of ships will always have this additional LTF, markings on them. So when they load, they can load deeper into the water than for the ordinary lowland marks. Okay. Another way of measuring the ship apart from the weight, we call it the tonnage. The tonnage is not a weight, but the volume of the ship. Okay, so they measure the total internal volume of the ship, and that will give you the gross tonnage. And then the tonnage or the space that can be used to carry cargo is known as the net tonnage. So you have the gross tonnage and then the net tonnage. The gross tonnage is the whole volume of the ship measured. The net tonnage is the space that can carry cargo. So the net tonnage then becomes the useful space for the carriage of the cargo. When we talk about the displacement, we are looking at the total weight of the ship and everything in it. That is known as the displacement. But we can have, apart from the main displacement, that is the total weight of the ship, usually when it is quoted, they give it for the summer mark. So they will tell you that the displacement on the summer mark is so much. That is what is quoted in the documents concerning the ship.